Well, if you took the history of the Giardini, of the pavilions, you have not only history with you have history of architecture, but also political history, because the history of pavilions reflects the geography of Europe, the geography of the world, which has been changing through time since the beginning of the last century. And you have an example of all possible architecture of the last century. Among these, of course, is the Canadian Pavilion, which is definitely one of the most peculiar ones, because it's the one who refuses completely any sort of pompous idea of self-representation of the state, of the nation. And this is the most friendly pavilion, is that I guess it sends and delivers quite clear messages about the attitude of the Canadian people, who have certainly never been keen in representing Canada as a big power, big classical architecture. But they like to be depicted and considered as a rich population, devoted to nature, devoted and attentive to their history, to their presence, in their history, no empire on their shoulders. So that pavilion is absolutely a perfect representation of this idea of Canada, and I like it very much. The fact that that pavilion was built as within the final agreement of the relationship between Canada and Italy after the war, and that reminds us of the great contribution that the Canadian Army gave to Italy for the freedom of Italy after the Nazi-fascist period. So there is a sort of historical and ethical importance of the pavilion that goes much beyond the present possible collaborations. The restoration of the pavilion for me is a very important thing, apart from the fact that it's an interesting restoration of a very interesting piece of architecture of the time. And instead of thinking of widening or building something else, we thought it could have been a greater contribution to that, to use the outside space, and we made an intervention of restoration in the green areas around it. Terraces overlooking the lagoon is a wonderful sort of part of the Giardini. The space is a challenge for a curator. Otherwise, should we have all white cubes? No. We have, and luckily the Canadian Pavilion is not white cubes. The white cube was very much in fashion some decades ago as the utmost, as the maximum, as the great solution to the problem of the exhibition space. I mean, luckily it is not. And this is a great challenge to curators. In contemporary art, the curator has to, one of his tasks is not just to hang paintings on the wall, is to let works and choose works who fit in the space. So the space speaks, and the space is part of the exhibition. The space is highly conditioning the choices of the curator. So that building is a quarter of a curator, because it acts as a sort of co-curator, if you want, because it suggests or condemn, or suggests not to do, or suggests to do, and this makes it alive. It's a living building.